He's at the Punchline. He's in town, and you're a funny guy. You've got these routines in your head, so I figure I'll toss you a mic, and you go.
And I'm going to do stand-up in front of 9 people in a radio station? No.
Was it something that was ruled accidental and then declared a murder?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't want to get into that now. You know, I'm just talking about LA to Vegas, but
okay.
Yeah, it was definitely rough.
Yes. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Do you think that the public will perceive you any differently after all that's been in the news about you?
What are you referring to specifically?
In at number 10, Quentin Tarantino.
So it's my job to try and ask you to.
And I'm shutting your butt down.
And that's entirely your.
What a line! I'm shutting your butt down. Quentin Tarantino was having none of this interviewer's questions, but still tried to go along with it. He kept his cool for about 3 minutes before the gloves started to come off. The journalist's name is Krishnan Gurumurthy, and he has become notorious for asking celebrities the most awkward and really big questions about themselves, their past, and their work. Stuff that would be better suited for a 3-hour podcast or an episode of 60 Minutes. However, during these press junkets where they're only doing the interview to sell their film, it's hardly the place or time. In at number 9, Cara Delevingne. Let's just say her dry British humor was not really received by these happy-go-lucky morning news anchors at CBS Sacramento. At the start of the interview, she was asked some very dumb questions. For example, the film Paper Towns was based on a book, so they asked her if she had read the book, and then immediately after made a snide comment about her probably not having enough time to read. Cara obviously takes offense to this judging by her body language, but instead decides to flip it into a joke, saying that she didn't even read the script, just winged the whole thing. The interviewers actually take this as factual for a moment before her laughing finally cuts the tension. And that's not even the most awkward part of this interview though.
I think it probably is us. Well then on that note,
We figured as much.
We'll let you go then. How about that? We'll let you go take a little nap, maybe get a Red Bull. How about that?
After one interviewer asks her why she isn't as excited as her other interviews, she remarks that it's very early and that she thought it was going well, so again, jokingly, she says it must be you. And the interviewer in the middle, like, oh my god, she sounded so bitter. That line of, well, we'll let you go take a little nap and have a Red Bull, how about that? Yes, how about that level of professional journalism? Good job, Good Morning Sacramento. In at number 8, Kourtney Kardashian. After her sister Kim was robbed in Paris, Today Extra, an Australian news outlet, was interviewing Kourtney via satellite from Los Angeles. They asked her how Kim was doing following this traumatic event, but suddenly Kourtney's face just freezes. You then can sort of hear what sounds like her publicist saying, "Do not answer that question."
Looks like Kourtney doesn't really want to go there with
I think
that
she's
question.
blanking me. I think she's totally blanking me on that question.
I think there's probably a PR person there saying, you know, don't talk about it.
The interviewer then goes on a bit of a rant saying that she could simply say her sister is doing fine, as they too speculate that she was told to be quiet. However, she then does answer the question on her own, saying, "She's not doing great, I think we're all still shaken up." And her response to what appeared to be her blanking was that the audio from their end wasn't coming through. In at number 7, Jesse Eisenberg.
Do you know the comedian Carrot Top?
Yes. Horrible.
You were like the Carrot Top of interviewers. No, and it's a good thing. It's
I'm
a
gonna
good
go
thing.
cry now.
No, don't cry now.
While promoting the film Now You See Me, Jesse Eisenberg just could not contain his utter disdain for this interview. Right out of the gate, he was on the offensive. The interviewer refers to Morgan Freeman as simply Freeman, for which Jesse takes offense to, oddly enough. He then, as you saw, remarks she's the Carrot Top of interviewing, which insults the interviewer so bad that she hurries Jesse to complete a magic trick just so that they can wrap it up. And the entire interview is just one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen, and this is only number 7 on the list. Trust me though, if you haven't watched this full interview, you must. You must do it. It is just a terrible exchange back and forth between an actor and a vlogger, essentially. In at number 6, Samuel L. Jackson. When you are interviewing a celebrity as big as Samuel L. Jackson, it's imperative that you do your homework. You know, like learn his name. When Sam Jackson was promoting the RoboCop remake, he was asked about a recent Super Bowl commercial he did. Sam replies, "What Super Bowl commercial?" and then hits KTLA reporter Sam Rubin with this.
What Super Bowl commercial?
Oh, you know what? I've admit my mistake.
See, you're as crazy as the people on Twitter.
Jackson then proceeds to say, "I'm not Lawrence Fishburne. We don't all look alike. We may be all black and famous, but we all don't look alike." And Rubin repeatedly apologizes for this very public faux pas, but the damage is done and this just got super awkward. Jackson doesn't let up though. He questions Sam Rubin, saying, "You're the entertainment reporter?" To make his point known, Samuel L. Jackson posted this image on Twitter of him wearing a t-shirt that says he's not Lawrence Fishburne, you know, just to avoid any further confusion.
At number 5, we have Jesse Eisenberg and his once socially awkward title being spun into that of a jerk in the wake of his Univision and Associated Press interviews. When he spoke with Associated Press, he detailed his Comic-Con experience to be difficult, even going so far as to label it as, quote, some kind of side. The highly insensitive remark obviously raised some horror, and when he attempted to clear his name, it fell on deaf ears. Moreover, his clarification came with the words, "I'm a normal person who has normal sensory experiences, so Comic-Con was very overwhelming for me." And let's just say people were not here for it. As for his Univision chit-chat, while promotions for Now You See Me were occurring, Jesse referred to the interviewer as the Carrot Top of interviewers, which many deemed as straight up rude. If you don't know, Carrot Top is a comedian who the interviewer labeled as, quote, horrible. So I'm sure you can see how that was insulting. Anyway, despite Jesse's need to prove his dislike for the process of interviews, he should probably rein in some points from his fellow industry buddy Kristen Stewart, who's expressed her own feelings of not enjoying public press appearances before finding her own path. At number 4, we have Paris Hilton's startling 2011 ABC interview, which showed proof of her still seemingly viewing herself as the top reality TV star worldwide, despite the media princess being overshadowed by her former assistant turned bestie Kim Kardashian. It's clear throughout the sit-down that Paris attempted to remain calm, but the grilling of the reporter, seemingly intent on discounting her worth, most likely set Paris off. When she was questioned on whether or not she believed her time as a reality star was donezo, Paris took that as her cue to exit stage left, leaving the set altogether. Some say she must not have been ready to accept what the world apparently already knows, that her chapter had officially reached its end long before her interview. Yikes. At number 3, we have the Australian newspaper interview with Denzel Washington, who seemed to make it apparent he didn't have extra time to deal with the press. His endless amount of sighs even caused him to go instantly viral. Reportedly, the interviewer flew miles and miles to do a press junket with Denzel, but at first it seemed he'd be a no-show. Thankfully, he did end up coming to the press junket, which is common in the industry to get quick dishes on celebrity to gain more buzz for them and the companies the interviewers are under. Understandably, this process is referred to as awkward and repetitive, and well, Denzel seemed to be no different. And while some actors are good sports, others like Julia Roberts and Tommy Lee Jones don't try nearly as hard. Apparently, Denzel joined this list shortly after. In the end, the interviewer's charm and persistence managed to get him engaged and somewhat more responsive than the daunting, cold exterior Denzel seemed to exude at first. Denzel even mentioned wanting to watch a suggested clip from the interviewer. But despite this, a year later, someone uploaded the interview to YouTube with the tagline of "arrogant rude interview" that's been watched millions of times. Unfortunately for Denzel, this just wasn't one of his best, but thankfully, the reporter still ended up having a great time overall. At number 2, we have Robert Pattinson's Twilight press frenzy, where it was obvious Robert was against any conversations regarding his then rumored relationship with his former co-star and ex-girlfriend Kristen Stewart. Naturally though, this became the burning red question in every media outlet, as everyone was clearly itching to ask Robert what their status was at the time. One of these people included Ryan Seacrest, who questioned him on his on-air show about what the ground of their relationship was. Robert was prompted to flee by his agent, and surprisingly, he did just that. In conclusion, Robert is no stranger to being around the center of awkward interviews, which clearly makes it harder for the general public to look at him in a more positive aspect. At number 1, we have the Kanye West comment that nearly ended this man's whole career, and that was his revealed thoughts on slavery. Warning, this may anger you. Anyway, Kanye served up quite the controversy and massive backlash in the media when he took to a TMZ Live interview to make a statement that pissed off the whole world. The public outcry forced people to question his mental stability again, and the comment in question was that he genuinely believes slavery is a choice. His views on the oppressive system were ignited not even a week following his Make America Great Again stunt, where he professed his admiration for then US President Donald Trump. On the show, he outlined his decision behind wearing the infamous baseball cap, which had since become a trademark in Trump's MAGA political movement. The conversation took a left though when Kanye spoke on slavery, where he was accompanied by conservative commentator Candace Owens, who is outspoken in the details of the centuries-long African American struggles of spending their lives shackled in servitude. His comment was of course met with stunned silence, which included the media outlet's founder Harvey. Kanye explained, quote, "You hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice. You were there for 400 years and it was all of y'all? It's like we're meant to be in prison. I like the word prison because slavery goes too direct to the idea of black blacks. Prison is something that unites us as one race. One of the TMZ staff, Van, called Wes out to take responsibility for his words, where he ranted, "While you're living the life that you've earned by being a genius, the rest of us in society have to deal with these threats to our lives. With the marginalization that has come from the 400 years of slavery that you said for our people was a choice. Frankly, I'm disappointed, appalled, and unbelievably hurt by the fact that you have morphed into something that, to me, is not real." Wes issued an apology to Van before embracing him, and later wrote a statement on Twitter to further clarify his points. In it, the rapper detailed, "To make myself clear, of course I know that slaves did not get shackled and put on a boat by free will. My point is for us to have stayed in that position even though the numbers were on our side means that we were mentally enslaved. The reason why I brought up the 400 years point is because we can't be mentally imprisoned for another 400 years. We need free thought now." Even if the statement was an example, just an idea.
Number 10, Cara Delevingne. Cara is a gifted actor and overall seems like a pretty solid human being, so much like the rest of us, she gets tired and annoyed from time to time. Unfortunately, that feeling took place on live television while she was promoting her movie Paper Towns. While making an appearance on the early morning show Good Day Sacramento, the interview did not get off to a great start. The program's anchor called her Carla, and she then spent the next few minutes trying to get info out of Cara but was failing miserably. Falling deep into the anchor role, she pulled out the old, "Hey, wow, you know, that's amazing. Listen, Carla, did you read the book that this thing's based on, or did you even have time because you're so busy?" She was having none of that. She was very, very sarcastic with each and every answer to the fairly generic questions. Do you relate to the character? What was your favorite moment? It was then that a third anchor abruptly popped in and asked Cara if she was exhausted, as she seemed a bit more excited to speak about the movie a few weeks prior in London. She giggled and said that she was fine. Apparently the premiere of the film was the night before, which she claimed to feel like the end of an era. But the anchors do not know when to quit. One of the anchors then suggested that she may be irritated, or maybe it was just them. They then cut the interview short and told her to take a nap and get a Red Bull. She can be heard saying, "Well, that's too far," before the anchor screeches over her and shuts her down. According to Cara, there really was no bad blood. She was just sick of answering the same questions over and over again. Following the interview, the man who popped in and gave his 2 cents was actually fired for causing such a tense situation on live television. Number 9. Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe means being in a ton of interviews. Robert had the fortune of playing Iron Man for over 10 years, being featured in 11 movies during that time. While doing press for his second round with the Avengers in 2015, he had the misfortune of speaking with a legendarily terrible interviewer named Krishnan Guru Murphy on Channel 4. Now, I've talked about this guy in another video for making Quentin Tarantino walk out of an interview, and he's making a return for something pretty similar. The interview is uncomfortable from the very beginning. Krishnan stumbles through his questions as quickly as he can, with Robert doing his best to keep things going along. But instead of asking questions about the movie, Krishnan decided to probe Robert on his life in prison and with substance control issues. Now, at first he's okay and he answers the question, but then Krishnan brings up his father and asks if he feels that he has escaped from his dark past. Robert is visibly anxious and he begins breathing heavily to keep himself calm. He asks what they're doing and the team says goodbye. He said Krishnan seemed nice, but things were getting a little bit too Diane Sawyer. This was one of the most uncomfortable interview moments in Robert's career, not even close to the worst for Krishnan. Number 8, Sofia Vergara. Fans of the show Modern Family will surely recognize Sofia as Gloria, aka Manny's mom, who is absolutely hilarious and heartwarming at the same time. Now, while speaking with Ellen in 2017 about her career and some new projects, Ellen decided to play a game called English Word of the Day. Claiming to be learning Spanish with 1 word a day, she wished to teach Sofia one as well. Before the segment, Sofia is roasting Ellen for her dislike of cotton, but when Ellen asks if she wants to learn the English word with her, Sofia scoffs and is visibly annoyed, claiming that she speaks English very well. Ellen gives her the word flabbergasted and asks her to define what it means. Not only does she pronounce it correctly the first time, but she knows exactly what it means. Ellen follows up with discombobulated, which left Sofia confused and thinking very hard, which she butchered the word. While she seemed to be taking things in stride, it turns out that Sofia was absolutely frustrated with participating in the game, as she's a bit self-conscious when it comes to her accent. Many considered the segment to be a little racist and more cringe-inducing than fun. I've seen the clip. That's accurate. Number 7. Zac Efron. Zac is one of the Disney kids that eventually made a name for himself as a legitimate performer, starring in comedy movies like Neighbors and 17 Again, as well as some more dramatic roles like in Charlie St. Cloud. In 2017, Zac starred alongside Hollywood heavyweight Dwayne Johnson in a revival of the Baywatch series. While promoting the film, Zac stopped by the Ellen DeGeneres show. Oh look, it's Ellen again! Ellen thought it would be fun to bring out a wax figure of Zac Efron that was on its way to be displayed in a real Hollywood wax museum. The figure is based on his Baywatch role, meaning that he's shirtless and his abs are present. Zac picks up his own shirt to show the audience the strange similarities, at which time Ellen just rubs his tummy for a moment. Zac then spends a few moments flexing and comparing himself to the statue before complaining that, oh man, it's bigger than he is. Seeing Troy from High School Musical flexing next to a statue of himself? Cringy. Number 6. Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White remake could have a massive impact on ticket sales and the overall project, according to branding experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she actually hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline as weird, while referring to the Prince character as just a straight-up stalker. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original movie in various interviews last year resurfaced online, where she talked about her version of the character. She said she's not going to be saved by the prince, she's not going to be dreaming about true love. While Disney may just be trying to modernize the classic, the comments have caused her to be labeled as a fake feminist by a lot of people in Hollywood. Some critics accused Rachel of gaslighting, and even one marketing consultant has warned Disney might need to be careful about how they have portrayed Snow White. Because Snow White has already been suffering from backlash well before Rachel made her comments, because Peter Dinklage actually spoke out about Disney not using true dwarf actors for the new film, instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites, because that always looks great. Rachel's role as Snow White is currently in the air while she is still casted in the role. Who knows, maybe this whole Hollywood strike thing might be the exact situation the studio needs to kick her out and get someone who's more in line with their themes. Number 5. John Mayer. John may be known for spending time with the ladies, but it's not all peaches and cream. The musician was doing an interview with Playboy magazine in 2010. Now I know it involves Playboy, who are notoriously provocative, but even they thought this interview was just a bit much. John gets into some pretty graphic depictions of things that he wanted to do to Jessica Simpson, using language that cannot be repeated online. But he then ventures off the physical intimacy thing and instead begins to speak about his, and I quote, hood pass, claiming that he had become so popular among black people that he could get away with anything he wanted, and he then called it the N-word pass. Yeah, not a great moment for this guy. Following the interview, fans were beyond upset at his behavior and his attitude towards women and honestly just people in general. Many turned on John, making a massive dent in his career, rightfully so, and nowadays this is one of the only things that he is remembered for. Well, that and his really bad cameo in Get Hard.
At number 4, we have Jay Leno questioning Kanye West. Jay Leno was the host of yet another late night show, and back in 2009, he had Kanye West on his show. You see, the event that caused this was Kanye West interrupting young Taylor Swift's mid-acceptance speech for the best music video, I might add, to say that Beyonce had the best music video and should have won, in front of an audience on TV. For some context, Kanye's mother had passed away in 2007, just a couple years prior to the incident. Jay Leno knew this, and he said that he was fortunate enough to have met his mother. So, Leno, in a very disrespectful fashion, asked Kanye if his mother would have been disappointed in him for doing that, and asked if she would have lectured him. You can see how shocked he is and how hurt he is hearing those words. He almost had no response. Whether or not you're a fan of him, that was still so unprofessional and cruel.
Number 3, Amy Schumer. In the mid-2010s, comedian Amy Schumer was named one of Time magazine's top 100 most influential people and was made to attend a red carpet event to celebrate with her fellow influencers. 2 of them were Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. While discussing the incident on the Graham Norton show, Amy revealed that there was a planned prank on Kim and Ye. Her goal was to get them to crack a smile and get some good fun pics from this event, but Kim and Kanye did not find this situation funny funny and continued to walk past her as she fell in front of them in a dramatic fashion. The best picture is just Kim staring at Amy for a moment being like, okay, and then just moving on. While the moment was meant to create a fun scene, it instead made Amy look like she had some kind of grudge against Kim and Kanye. While not an interview, the incident on the red carpet forced Comedy Central to postpone a season of her show until things were sorted out with Kim. Well, it turned out that not only did Kim not care about this, but she did end up finding the entire thing funny. With the two apparently now being close friends, Amy even made a cameo on Kim's new reality series, The Kardashians.
At number 2, we have the Marvel interview. I use such a vague title because there is a lot to unpack about this interview with Robert Downey Jr. He had a very rocky upbringing, and he was involved in a lot of illegal activities, had substance issues, and has an internet-famous mugshot. But he's been clean for years, all thanks to his wife. So when the man doing the interview for a Marvel movie pressed about his past, it made him very uncomfortable. And it wasn't just asking some surface level questions, he asked about his relationship with his father and mentioned how he has opened up about his issues with liquids and substances in his upbringing. He then went on to ask RDJ if he really thought he was free from all that, or something you think about. This was when RDJ cut him off, left the room, and walked away from the interview. Imagine the audacity the interviewer must have had to even think about asking Robert such a thing, and even though he had been clean for so long and had finally gained the confidence to speak up about it.
And at number 1, Will Smith. That's right, Will Smith is on this list for slapping someone, but it's not Chris Rock. Today we're talking about an incident on the red carpet that left one paparazzo with a massive red mark on their face and a fired stamp on their forehead. Will was walking the red carpet in 2013 giving people interviews when a Ukrainian comedian named Vitaly Sedgwick approached him, a man who is unfortunately world famous for being an absolutely terrible person, especially towards celebrities. He pretended to be a reporter and started interviewing Will Smith, but then he suddenly pulls Will towards him and tries to kiss him on his cheeks and his mouth. Well, Will obviously shoves him back and gave him a little, "Hey bud, no thank ya," just a little backhand to the face. A team of security following Mr. Smith picked this guy up and carried him away like the toddler he was. Who knew Will was practicing for his Oscar slap all the way back then? Sedgwick was finally reprimanded for his actions and was actually made to pay a hefty fine for attempting to force himself on Will Smith. Needless to say, that guy works for himself now. Number 10, Mike Tyson. So I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to this man. He is someone who seems to just bounce back after every single heinous thing he's done. So we're gonna run through a few of them. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the 80s, and it wasn't even something he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs. When the topic of Mike's behavior came up, she said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper. Recent reports had also surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with Robin, something she seemingly confirmed, while Mike just stared at the interviewer the entire time, giving him an evil look. Now, that was one of the first little notches on his belt. That wasn't really a meltdown. As the years went by, more and more controversies came to light, and during a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career in jeopardy, but he finally drove that nail into the coffin on CP24's Breakfast Television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from "So, what's the show about?" to "So, should you even be allowed on stage, you monster?" That's not what he actually said, but apparently that's what Mike Tyson heard, because he stopped answering questions and would instead hurl sarcastic insults. The F word is once again his favorite and just throws it at him. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since then, and probably for a good reason. Number 9, Paula Abdul. Q13 Fox News. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound like a little bit of a fool. During an interview with Q13, things started out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of their own. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original issues. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claims that the worst singers that he has ever encountered dwell. Instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. It's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was actually just the way that she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula is noticeably woozy. Simon Cowell has actually claimed the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see if she would bring in the American Idol viewers, and when that didn't pan out, he realized the right move to make was to let her go because she's not great on television. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only making that meltdown bigger and bigger. Number 8, Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe means a ton of interviews. Now, Robert had the fortune of playing Iron Man for 10 years, being featured in 11 movies. While doing press for his second round with the Avengers in 2015, he had the misfortune of speaking with a legendarily terrible interviewer, Krishnan Guru Murphy, on Channel 4. Now, I've talked about this guy in other videos for making Quentin Tarantino walk out of an interview, and he is making a return for something pretty similar. The interview is uncomfortable from the very beginning. Krishnan stumbles through his questions as quickly as he can, with Robert doing his best just to keep things smooth. Instead of asking questions about the movie though, Krishnan decided to probe Robert about his life in prison and with substance control issues. Now, at first, he's okay and answers the questions, but then Krishnan brings up his dad and asks if he feels that he escaped his dark past. Robert is visibly anxious and begins breathing pretty heavy to keep himself calm. He asks what they were doing there, and then the team said goodbye. He stood up and walked out of the room, and he said that Krishnan seemed nice, but things were getting just a little bit too Diane Sawyer for his taste. This was one of the most uncomfortable interview moments in Robert's career, and it's not even close to the worst one for Krishnan. Number 7, Sofia Vergara. Fans of the show Modern Family will recognize Sofia as Gloria, aka Manny's mom, who is just absolutely hilarious and heartwarming at the same time, even outside of Modern Family. Now, while speaking with Ellen in 2017 about her career and some new projects coming up, Ellen decided to play a game called English Word of the Day. Claiming to be learning Spanish with one word a day, she wished to teach Sofia one as well. Before the segment, Sofia is roasting Ellen for her dislike of cotton, but when Ellen asks if she wants to learn the English word with her, Sofia scoffs and is visibly annoyed, claiming that she speaks English very well. Ellen gives her the word flabbergasted and asks her to define what it means. Not only does she pronounce it correctly the first time, but she knew exactly what it meant. Ellen follows it up with discombobulated, which left Sofia confused and thinking pretty hard. Now, she butchered the word, and while she seemed to be taking things in stride, it turns out Sofia was so frustrated with participating in this game, as she is a bit self-conscious when it comes to her accent. A lot of people consider the segment to be a little bit racist and more cringe-inducing than fun. I've seen the clip. That's accurate. Number 6, Joaquin Phoenix. We understand a dedication to your craft, and Joaquin Phoenix is just a prime example. This dude's acting career has been going steady since he first appeared in the 1989 comedy Parenthood when he was in his teens. Now, while he is seen as one of the greatest actors in recent history, his reputation on set was a little tarnished thanks to a freak out while filming the 2018 solo flick Joker. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote the shoot when Jimmy plays a behind-the-scenes clip of Joaquin getting loud and angry at a man named Larry, and the constant whispering behind the cameras before dropping a few F-bombs and storming off this set. When the cameras came back to the studio, Joaquin was frozen in shock and clearly not expecting that clip to ever see the light of day. He is not having a good time. He explained that Larry was a cinematographer who teased Joaquin off set earlier in the day, calling him a diva and referring to him as Cher. In fact, if you're watching the clip and during the outbursts, you can actually hear him say, "You want to call me Cher? How is that an insult?" He then explained that there is a lot of pressure on set, especially in a closed space, like the apartment from the scene that they were filming. He apologized to the audience for having to see him behave like that, which, was met with applause. Because at the end of the day, he's a performer and no harm came from the outburst or the meltdown, and honestly, if Larry's cool with it, so are we.
At number 10, we have Tom Cruise's bizarre 2005 Today Show interview, where Matt Lauer asked the actor about his Brooke Shields' use of antidepressants comment. Everyone's favorite Scientology poster boy completely flipped out by calling Matt glib and stating he didn't understand psychiatry as Tom does and only communicates it. Therefore, Matt shouldn't be speaking on things he doesn't understand. The Church of Scientology has been notoriously known to be opposed to psychiatry, by the way. However, Tom's press tour incident also came with Matt questioning if his KDPDA scene was a publicity stunt, and the damage to Tom's reputation from that point was enough to have him in a single movie per year, until he reemerged on the public's good side with his 2008 role in Tropic Thunder. At that point, he was no longer publicly speaking about Scientology though. Matt has since admitted to Howard Stern that a publicist of Tom's had rung him prior to a segment airing with attempts to remove that portion of the sit-down, and Cruz had also issued an apology to him. At number 9, we have the formerly popular band 5 Seconds of Summer, who managed to alienate both their fans and the general public from a single Rolling Stone interview. In a December 2015 published piece, Michael Clifford was hungover from the performance the night before the interview, where he dished that they were surrounded by a load of phony people. He also detailed how they partied with Justin Bieber despite remarks that the Canadian singer allegedly hated them. Their drummer Aston Irwin further pushed that their female-dominated fanbase had them needing to prove that they were a quote real band and not just doing it for the girls. However, frontman Luke Hemmings counteracted this claim by over-explaining that the 4 young men were constantly placed in situations on their tour bus where they were surrounded by a lot of girls. He also suggested that the possibilities were quote endless when they were asked if they sleep with multiple people at once on the same night. It's safe to say we all know why we haven't heard much of them since. At number 8, we have the 2008 R. Kelly interview that flew his career further off the rails amidst his allegations of inappropriately messing around with aged girls. Journalist Tour sat down with R. Kelly where he outrightly asked during part of the interview if Kelly favored teenage girls. In response, Kelly questioned how old Tour was referencing, and a visibly taken aback Tour doubled down with clarification of what he meant. Kelly had to be sure though, so he asked if Tour was talking about 19-year-olds specifically, to which Tour responded confirming that he meant that and younger. R. Kelly then went on a spiel about how he has friends who were underage or freshly new to adulthood, but that he's allegedly never done anything to nor with them, and that the journalist shouldn't listen to people on his team who he previously fired. Tour later took to a Daily Beast interview to speak on his R. Kelly media run-in, where he admitted that upon BET's airing, R. Kelly's team demanded it be wiped off the face of the internet, but it was seemingly too late to stop the downward spiral that was R. Kelly's career. At number 7, we have the awkwardest Tom Hiddleston interview to exist, following his February 2000 GC dish, where he discussed his then split from singer Taylor Swift. In regards to this, Tom complimented his and Taylor's relationship immensely, speaking about how they were lovely together and their relationship was indeed real. Tom was even asked about his infamous I Heart TS tank, where he explained it stemmed from a friendly game which later became a joke between their friend group at the time. Tom was apparently extremely earnest during this interview, which reportedly landed him at his interviewer's hotel room door at 6 a.m. to clarify the points he made about Taylor during the interview, detailing that he was quote crushed by the end of their relationship. Since Tom's roles did in fact dry up, aside from his Loki reprisals, his 2019 Skull Island role, and his occasional voiceover work. At number 6, we have Jim Carrey and his famous wallflower and overwhelmingly dark interview style. There isn't just one to chalk this up to, rather plenty, but the greatest example is most likely his New York Fashion Week interview from the Harper Bazaar's Icons party. The multiple questions on icons at the event caused Jim to calmly spiral, and the reactions of the interviewer were nothing short of amusing. The awkward event in question harbored viral-worthy comments to prompts, like Jim saying stuff like, "There's no meaning to any of this, so I wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to, and here I am. This is just the absolute lowest aiming possibility that we could come up with. I don't believe in icons, I don't believe in personalities. I believe we're a field of energy dancing for itself, and I don't care." Much like other interviews in the past, such as Jim's Iowa University of Management 2014 meeting, he's made similar remarks which turned heads. Overall though, to the reporter's best effort, she could not save the interview from all the meme-worthy moments it soon took on. And despite his former success, we haven't really heard much of Jim nowadays, have we?
In at number 5, Jim Carrey. At the New York Fashion Week in 2017, Jim Carrey made a rare appearance, and while walking down the red carpet, he did his best to avoid an interview with E! News. At first, he tried to kind of twirl around a few times and not really stand still, hoping that would work, but she was persistent. Carrey then says he wanted to find the most meaningless event that he could go to, and that's how he ended up there. The interviewer interviewer, trying to keep the integrity of this event high, claims that it's a celebration of icons, for which Jim says, icons don't exist, I don't believe in personalities, I don't believe you exist, but there is a wonderful fragrance in the air. And before departing from this awkward interview, he leaves her with this little nugget of truth. And at number 4, Dakota Johnson. This without a doubt has to be the cringe heard around the world. We got to watch the live falling out between Dakota Johnson and her mother Melanie Griffith on the red carpet of the Oscars. Oh, the Oscars. Please insert fake laughter here. Man, Hollywood is so fake. Just because the cameras are rolling, they fake laugh their way through this entirely awkward interview. And the whole thing started off on a really bad note. The interviewer praises Melanie while repeatedly calling Dakota her little girl, which she is, but it just downplays how successful she's been on her own. Then when her mother is asked if she's seen 50 Shades of Grey, her mom outright says that she wouldn't watch the movie, which clearly hurts her daughter regardless of the content and the positive reviews. A kid is always looking for that recognition from their parents. In at number 3, Robert Downey Jr. This guy again. You remember that interviewer from earlier that was just a little too pushing? Well, he's back again, but this time with RDJ. And didn't I tell you folks earlier that he was known for just having the worst interviewers? I mean, this guy should be questioning politicians, not actors about their upcoming movies. He goes way too deep with Robert Downey Jr. in this interview, to the point where Robert Downey Jr. just says, you know what, we're done here.
What are we doing?
Well, I'm just asking questions, that's all.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Oof. That slapped so hard it felt like a movie. Speaking of slaps, when Downey stands up to leave, he gives Krishnan a very hard pat on the shoulder as if to say, good work, you dummy. The reason why he got so upset was because these questions virtually came out of left field. He went from asking him about superhero movies to Robert's, let's say, tumultuous past. In at number 2, Tom Hardy. If you thought that was hard to watch, just wait until you see this awkward interview with Tom Hardy. At the Toronto Film Festival during a press conference for his film Legend, he's asked by an LGBT news organization about his sexuality, claiming that while his character is upfront about it, Tom on the other hand has been much more ambiguous about his sexuality, which leads to this kind of terrible exchange. It's the epitome of awkwardness.
Are you asking me about my sexuality?
Sure.
Why?
Why?
Thank you.
Okay.
Why indeed. That thank you he gives at the end too, oof, I felt that. Last but not least, at our number 1 spot, Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is one of the most successful comedians of all time. His show Seinfeld was on television for 9 years, and Jerry's decision to go out on top proved to be one of the most lucrative deals ever for this comedian. Since the final episode, the show has generated over $3 billion in repeat fees, but for whatever reason, Larry King thought they cancelled the show. Even though Larry King worked for CNN, he wasn't known for his hard-hitting questions, yet for whatever reason, he decided to use an interview promoting Jerry Seinfeld's B movie to ask him if Seinfeld had been canceled. And you can see in Seinfeld's body language how frustrated he gets when Larry even tries to insinuate this. Jerry does not back down though and immediately goes on the attack, telling King that he was the #1 show on television before adding the very crass line of, "Do you know who I am? What's the deal with you not knowing who I am?"
At number 10, we have thinking Kate Hudson won an Oscar. In the world of Hollywood, winning an Oscar is one of the biggest career-changing moments. So when ABC reporter George Penicino said, "Kate, you know what it's like to win an Oscar," to which she was uncomfortable and replied, I've never won an Oscar. For some background information, Kate Hudson starred in movies like Glass Onion, Mother's Day with Jennifer Aniston, as well as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So I can understand why he thought she would have won. But when you're an interviewer, it's important to have a base of knowledge on the people who are going to be there, so as to not embarrass yourself. And this was no exception. Thankfully for George, he wasn't fired because of his little live television slip-up, but it's safe to say that he has learned his lesson about making assumptions.
Number 9, Zac Efron's Love Tubes. Zac rose to fame as a Disney darling, playing the leading role of Troy Bolton in the popular High School Musical series. Since his Disney days, Zac has lent his face and voice to several projects over the years, but the red carpet event that we're talking about today was for the animated Dr. Seuss movie, The Lorax. Zac, who voiced the main character of the film, was walking the red carpet when he suddenly handed his assistant something in his pocket. As he handed them the product, something fell out of his pocket and onto the ground. That something is a word that I can't say online, so let's just call them love tubes. Zach's love tube wrapper was flat on the carpet right there for the world to see. He quickly picked it up, but the damage was already done. In the first interview following this incident, the interviewer asked Zach if anything unplanned had happened to him recently, and he then explained that it was a complete accident, that there was no pre-show pocket check, anything that could have prevented it. Well, Illumination didn't like that excuse, and they also didn't like their main star being associated with such an adult product. So when the plans for a Lorax sequel were brought to the studios, Zach's name was left out and replaced by another star. I guess whoever they picked wasn't famous enough because the project was ultimately shelved by the studio, and Zach was able to find work somewhere else. In Baywatch.
At number 8, we have Jim Carrey's existential rant. Jim Carrey is a character who has had many varying roles. From the Grinch in the iconic live-action version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he was in The Cable Guy with Matthew Broderick, and he most recently played Dr. Eggman in the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies. His IMDb spans on, but something important to know about him is that he had really bad depression, and really let himself go over the years. One of those moments, we really saw how the mind of a genius works was when he was on a rant during an interview at the 2017 Harper's Bazaar Icons party. No one really knew why he showed up in the first place if he was so unhappy to be there, but former E! reporter Kat Sadler came up to him to ask him questions. He leaned into the mic and he said, "There is no meaning to any of this." When she asked why he was attending the party, he said that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing he could come to and join, and there he was. Sadler tried to pry about other things and what the term icon meant to him, but he continued to spew existential nonsense that made everyone uncomfortable aside from him. It may not have been gross, but his career did begin to decline, both before and after this.
If there is one thing that should be known about Taylor Swift, is that she can end entire careers with one conversation. In 2015, Taylor was on the red carpet for the Grammy Awards when she was interviewed by Entertainment Tonight. The woman who interviewed her started the interview by asking her cameraman to pan up and down, literally checking Taylor out with this massive camera. It's not weird at all. After going along with the bit for a moment and telling the camera about her dress, the interviewer said that she honestly just wanted a shot of Taylor's legs because, as she said before, Taylor is going to be going home with more than a trophy. Maybe a man. Well, Taylor didn't appreciate that comment or the assumption. She did not laugh and then proceeded to tell the interviewer that she would be going home with no men, just hanging out with friends, maybe some of her cats. While the majority of the interview went well, the interviewers were reprimanded behind the scenes by Taylor herself. The news of Taylor's dislike for the interviewers made its way up to the top, where the ET executives decided to keep them off of the red carpet for a while. Remember, keep your creepy camera gestures to yourself, lady.
At number 6, we have David Letterman with Jennifer Aniston. David Letterman used to be the host of The Tonight Show before Jimmy Fallon took over. He's also a comedian who was successful for many years, and some comedians can take a sketch too far, or commit to a bit that makes people uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened to a young Jennifer Aniston while on the show with him. They were making conversation, as one does, but then he got up and tried to eat her hair. I understand that you can really like someone as an actor, but when you are actively trying to eat their hair on live television, that is just too far. However, like the true professional she is, she let him. And there are photos out there of David Letterman leaning over Miss Aniston with her hair in his mouth.
Number 5, Robin Williams. We lost one of the greatest performers in our lifetime in 2014. But even 9 years later, his co-stars are still gushing about how impactful this man was in their lives. Robin and Nathan Lane starred together in a film called Birdcage. Now, I've personally never seen it, but considering the cast and ratings for this movie, it's on my list now. Nathan and Robin did interviews together for the film and took some time to sit down with one of the greatest TV hosts of all time, Miss Oprah Winfrey. The interview was on the right track, but then Oprah asks Nathan how he is able to get into the character so well. Nathan, of course, playing a drag queen in the film. At the time, Mr. Lane was not an openly gay man, and he felt like there was no way to tiptoe around this topic without eventually being outed on Oprah's show. After an awkward moment, superhero Robin swoops in, just diverts the conversation to a new topic, and they move on. In interviews from the past couple of years, Nathan has mentioned the Oprah incident and knows there's no ill intention on her part and considers Robin to have saved him from what could have been a very, very awkward moment. Number 4. Dakota Johnson. When Dakota Johnson was a guest on the Ellen DeGeneres show in 2019, she took a more subtle and pulled back approach to addressing an issue with the host. Ellen asked Johnson when her birthday was, and then claimed that she had never received an invite for the party. Then the 50 Shades actor quickly smiled and revealed that she actually had in fact extended the invite to Ellen, but received no reply. Ellen was baffled, asking Dakota if she was sure and that there was no possible way, to which she replied, "Ask literally anyone here, specifically your producer Jonathan." Following the comment, Ellen is seen searching the room for Jonathan with this mean expression on her face, which is understandable. She just got outed as a liar on her own show. Unfortunately for Ellen, that wouldn't be the last time, as only a few months later, a bunch of news stories and rumors started to circulate about her mistreating her staff, eventually leading to the show's cancellation. Looks like Dakota delivered her 50 Shades of oops. Number 3, Brie Larson. Brie was announced as the newest member of the Marvel Universe in 2019, starring in the film Captain Marvel as the titular superhero. At first, people were pretty excited to see what Marvel would do with the property. Captain Marvel is one of their original superheroes. However, when the movie was actually released, fans were very upset with her performance. According to them, she was stale and seemed bored from start to finish. When asked about the online hate at D23's red carpet last year, Brie said she's not sure if she'd even continue to play the character beyond her upcoming Captain Marvel sequel, The Marvels. She's aware of all the hate surrounding her character and defends the role by telling people that that's how she was told to play it, but it's also Brie Larson. She's always been stiff, but it's kinda why she's funny. The moment was extremely uncomfortable, with many fans calling for her to be fired from the role if she hated it so much. It's not that she hates the role, it's that she hates the people who hate her. Number 2, Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous. This woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, personal life, and the recent situations that she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously just been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on her show Simple Life, but had a much deeper and more serious tone in real life. But the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asks Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege Kim Kardashian had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says nothing, looks to her publicist, and then goes to stand up. They almost wrap the entire interview, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear things up. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable to talk about this? Is it because it's true? Well, it turns out the world answered that question for her, as Kim's show Keeping Up with the Kardashians made it big, and Paris Hilton's show, well, it was cancelled after one season, so yikes. Number 1, David Letterman. After many years of being extremely odd towards his female guests, I could not pick one single interview. So the number 1 spot just goes to David Letterman in general. There are several examples over the years of David being a little bit too intimate with his guests, including a time when he would not stop telling Jennifer Aniston how good her legs looked in her dress. He literally told Madonna to go kiss a man in the audience for fun. He called Keira Knightley a lovely offering. He told Dolly Parton he wanted to see her sweaty. The list goes on. It took way too long for someone to realize that this dude was just a bit too open at times, sharing just all the information that's just too much, way too much. One thing he continued to do right up until he retired in 2014 was show revealing or intimate photos of his guests without their knowledge, like when Emma Watson was forced to explain a wardrobe malfunction after David pulled out a photo from a recent red carpet event. He brushed people's hair, he made dirty jokes. Like, seriously, this dude was obsessed with legs. In fact, one of the last interviews that ever took place on his show was the previously mentioned Jennifer Aniston incident, where he just sat there commenting on her looks for like the entire thing. While his career was never actually destroyed, I thought it would be a nice mention because, hey, this is a list of people who have done some pretty weird stuff on interviews, so David's not an exception. Number 5, Nicolas Cage. The most unhinged man in Hollywood history. One of the few people who somehow managed to star in billions of movies, but has barely seen or kept a cent of that money. During a press junket in 1990, Nick went on a talk show called Wogan to discuss his latest project, Wild at Heart. When the host Terry Wogan announced Nick Cage, he entered with karate kicks, a front flip, somersault. He threw wads of cash at the audience because, hey, he's Nick Cage, why not? And when he finally sat down, moments before the interview actually began, he asked if he could take his jacket off. He proceeds to take his jacket off and the shirt underneath of it, because if people thought Nick Cage was all together, they were proven wrong during this interview. Despite the content being relatively tamed, the entire time you can just see sweat glistening off of Nick's chest, because guess what? Wearing a leather jacket on your bare chest is beyond uncomfortable, especially when there are lights aimed at you. Now sure, it might look cool until you take it off and you just have a heat rash. Nick's always been unhinged, but this meltdown during this interview was truly unique. His behavior in the 90s was apparent and well documented thanks to him literally being in like 2 movies a year. Number 4, Christian Bale. Christian is a very versatile actor, physically and of course skill-wise. He's able to shrink and grow his physique seemingly at will. He's played everything from a skinny substance addict to Batman in 2008. Christian starred in the 3rd film of the Terminator franchise, Terminator Salvation, and while he was filming a scene, director of photography Shane Holbert apparently just moved into Christian's eyesight, and this caused Christian to snap out of character and into defense mode. The now infamous audio clip of Christian screaming at Shane to make matters worse, anyone trying to calm Christian down were met with an equally swift verbal lashing. While the cinematographer was just checking a light to make sure that it was in the right place, you know, like doing his job, Bale made it his mission to share his intense feelings with the entire crew. When the audio leaked, Bale apologized for his actions and told the world to praise the crew for their work. Now while the movie turned out okay visually speaking, the project as a whole is remembered as a terrible Terminator movie, and he gets pretty uncomfortable when he talks about it on stage. Number 3, Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous, because this woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, her personal life, and the recent situations she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on the show Simple Life, but had a much deeper and serious tone in real life, but the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asked Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege, Kim Kardashian, had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says nothing, looks to her publicist, and goes to stand up. They almost wrapped the interview entirely, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear up the air. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable talking about this? And it's because it's true. Well, it turns out the world answered the question for her, because Kim Kardashian's show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, made it big, and Paris Hilton's show was cancelled after 1 season. So, there you go. Number 2, Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible person who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry, and somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know, Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry, like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist, who knows. The interview came at the height of Tom's pretty public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticisms of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. I looked up the definition of that word, and it means fluent and voluble, but insincere and shallow. What? This was only one of the several interviews from 2005 that I wanted to discuss today, especially with Tom Cruise. Good lord, that was a rough year for him. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a nutcase. Just ask Oprah. I mean, ever since the mid-2000s, his career has mainly been Mission Impossible, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there, not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, my favorite entry, Bobcat Goldthwait. Allow me to start the entry by doing an impression of Bobcat. Thank you. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 80s and 90s, this man was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top, high-energy performance was so well received by any and all who saw him. I can still hear his voice echoing in my head whenever I think of Police Academy. In 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall invited his longtime buddy Bobcat onto his talk show, which unfortunately was in its final days on the air. When he heard the cancellation, Bobcat decided to send a message to the big brains that made the decision, because he spray painted the word Paramount on the wall behind him, throws furniture around, breaks TV screens, all the while Arsenio is just sitting back and laughing. When they returned from commercial, the set was in ruins, and despite that, Arsenio joked that he was like, the worst part is I have to pretend like I'm mad at him. Joke's on him, that wasn't the only talk show meltdown he partook in. A few years after this, Bobcat set a chair on fire on the Jay Leno show for no reason, just for fun. Like he was standing there just going, fire. He was fined over $3,000 and made to replace the chair. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, he hasn't been asked to be on any talk shows recently.